And tonight, a leading Republican senator is calling for Senator Mitch McConnell to go ahead and step down. Here's Senator Mike Lee earlier on Sunday Morning Futures.
Republican senators are not part of some feudal system. There's nothing personal against any individual in leadership. And yet, we do have to deal with this issue because this is how we alienate our voters. This is how we lose elections that should be won. If we keep doing things through our leadership that end up enacting priorities for the Democrats, we're going to have brand confusion.
Alicia, you mentioned earlier in the show that you report on these things. And so we've seen the drama in the House, unprecedented.
Right.
At this point, we're seeing drama in the White House that's bordering on unprecedented. And now we have drama in the Senate. And we think of the Senate as this stately body, folks that are by law older, but also have been around longer and can debate without notes and bring so much to the table. 18 Republicans is not a small number when they have a minority already to swap and vote with the Democrats, to include the minority leader. Is this kind of drama a part of what's paralyzing the Republican Party?
Well, it seems to be paralyzing them, especially when now you have the senators fighting on television over the Senate and over their own party. That probably is not a good look. But when it comes to Mitch McConnell, I think there are some things that people forget. He is the minority leader. He is not the majority leader. And when he has been the majority leader, he has had a pretty successful run of getting things done in the name of Republicans. And when you stop and think about the Supreme Court, think about our Attorney General, Merrick Garland, right now, who, if it weren't for Mitch McConnell and stopping that nomination by Barack Obama, he would be, in all likelihood, a U.S. Supreme Court justice. And when people and Republicans look at the makeup of the U.S. Supreme Court, Mitch McConnell had so much to do with that. So he's seen a lot of that. I think that sometimes people forget that when you're the minority leader, there's a limitation to what you can do.
I want to push back on that just a little bit. And Lisa, I want to take this to you. There's an anecdote on Capitol Hill that when every senator looks in the mirror, they see a president looking back. The Senate operates differently than the House. They don't fall in line. They all want to lead. They all want to be independent. And they've got a 6-year runway to do with their voting record what they may. But just on Mitch McConnell alone, I would say the Tea Party would not say that he did a whole lot as majority or minority leader. I would say that the MAGA or Freedom Caucus would say that he hasn't gotten a whole lot done other than those justices. Is this just the nature of the Senate, or is this something that Republicans need to try to work on?
No, I mean, conservatives in the Senate are pissed off. I'm told I can say that word, so I hope I don't get you all. But no, they're mad at Mitch McConnell. They feel like he led them to slaughter on the border deal. I mean, you've got Mike Lee, who also tweeted that the GOP leadership screwed us. I've interviewed Senator Ron Johnson on my podcast, and he feels like what Mitch McConnell did is he led them into a trap where now Joe Biden can blame the Senate can blame Republicans for not getting a border deal done. And he said the majority of the conference were on board with some sort of funding for Ukraine contingent upon actual border enforcement mechanisms. And that didn't happen. Because they don't trust Joe Biden, right? They don't trust, he's a lawless president. They don't trust him. So they wanted some sort of actual enforcement mechanisms put in there. So they feel like Mitch McConnell led them to slaughter. Also, Mitch McConnell's been there since 1985, right? That's as long as I've been alive. Obviously, I'm still very young, but that's a long time to be in the Senate. He is the longest serving GOP Senate leader, right? So he's been there and think about how much the world has changed since 1985. Think about how much the world has changed since Donald Trump has even come onto the scene, right? So the Republican Party looks different, and Mitch McConnell's not a reflection of that, and he also has health concerns.
And that point there, exactly, Tom, I'll bring this to you. We could do a montage almost equal to Joe Biden of Mitch McConnell over the last year, especially losing his words, freezing up. I know he's had medical problems. I'm not making fun of him. I don't really ever mean to make fun of Biden, but these are real concerns. If there was a poll for Mitch McConnell on how people think he is cognitively, he probably wouldn't fare well on it after this last year. Is this maybe just another sign that there's time for new leadership across the board, not just, say, the White House?
How are Republicans going to make the case that Joe Biden is out of touch or he's suffering from mental decline when you're looking at the minority leader who keeps freezing?
Exactly.
But, obviously, he knows he is a political operator, but I think he has missed a few steps lately. He used to be able to package these things where he would put one bill with another. We see through that nonsense now. When you put Ukraine aid in with the border bill, two completely unrelated things, you know that both of those are getting weaker, okay? So you're not fooling us anymore. Put one thing at a time.
I like it. I think most Republicans in the House like it too. Maybe even the Senate. We'll see.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.